very bad thing? To whom, sir? To whom? Yes, sir. Well, I don't know.
My name is Paul Conroy. I'm an American citizen from Hastings, Michigan. I'm a civilian truck driver for Creston, Roland, and Thomas. And I've been taken hostage somewhere in Iraq.
You realize what you've done to my wife?
They still have that. Yeah.
That was back when the intros were like 10 minutes long. So.
And always violent. He
Sorry
technically
about that.
shot you, so...
Oh, really? I thought he was aiming the screen left.
He was, well...
Whatever.
Movies at CheshireTV.org, and your theory on whom Gregory Peck just killed. I'm Mark.
I'm Tom.
And we are the
Cinemaniacs. So you can tell us about your exciting weekend as we get to the end.
If we have time at the end, it was very exciting.
It's not a huge week we have right now, but we do have some. One that's actually been pretty well anticipated, if I shall start.
Oh, please do.
I shall start. Ridley is back, strangely enough, directing this one. I didn't know that. Why he isn't directing Blade Runner, I don't know, but I got to talk about Blade Runner. Every week we'll be talking about Blade Runner until October 6th. But he directed the original, which is a cult classic, and he's back once again, continuing this Promethean story about a big old bug. Thank you very much. He got it. About a big old bug who starts inside you and works its way out. We got to follow this ship out there and find out what the alien is doing on Covenant. Close, sort of. They're back again.
Once again.
Yes.
So this takes place, for those of you who've tuned in late, this takes place before the events in the original series of Alien films.
Right.
So we had Prometheus.
But after Prometheus.
Prometheus was a couple of years ago, and that was sort of here's the genesis of, because you've all been dying to know, where did the aliens come from?
Yes, exactly.
All this prequel horsepucky of having to explain everything. They're scary and they're going to kill you.
Right.
Pretty much all I ever needed to know about
Right,
the
just
aliens.
another reason to see chest bursting.
And why do they make prequels? That's
Yep.
why. I like Prometheus, though, personally. A lot of people I know didn't.
I liked it more on reviewing
it. I liked how it was more thoughtful and contemplative, made you think a little. And it was a little slow and pretty to look at, and the 3D was good and all that. So I'm open to more of these sorts of films.
Okay.
This continues the story. It picks up a period of time after Prometheus occurred, and it answers more questions and poses more questions and gives you more information that they just made up about how everything came to be. My reaction when I walked out of this movie after it was over, and there's no post-credit sequence, folks. Let me save you 10 minutes of looking at 4-column names that are in microfine print. There's no post-credits gag.
Right.
Once the credits start, the movie's over. There's no little PS.
Yeah, this is Alien. Why do you...
No, well, like
Was
every
there
movie, so
previously?
many movies do this now.
Marvel certainly does.
So I'm just saying, I was far from the only person sitting to the end of the credits in this
Really?
movie, just in case.
Interesting. Okay.
I think Marvel has trained us to wait for a little something extra. So when I walked out of the movie at the end, my reaction was, that was perfectly fine for a movie that does not need to exist, which is the case for all these.
Okay, exactly,
so
yeah.
It continues things that started in Prometheus. I think if you're really well versed in the alien lore, I've been told there are little things throughout the movie that are little nods or tips or connections to things. The action, once it gets going, is very good and edge of your seat and creepy and very gory at times.
Yeah.
And very exciting, so that it fulfills that. If you're looking for that, I think it probably satisfies some things that Prometheus didn't for some people, and that for Prometheus the alien stuff does not happen until the very end of the movie. Here you don't have to wait too long to get to that. I do find it interesting, reflecting upon the Alien series as a whole, that it is what a phenomenal coincidence that the lone survivor of every alien massacre is a lady. Now I understand that was the Ripley character, but when
Okay.
you're doing the prequels and it's always a woman every time, to me that seems, I don't know. Not that it's implausible. It just seems like a coincidence that the only person who can fix this is a woman every time. Also, it very much stood out to me that the Danny McBride character, who is in no way portrayed to be a genius in this film or a cultured individual, he's a guy who works on a glorified cargo ship in space,
Right.
is a huge John Denver fan. That seemed a little odd to me.
Right.
Because this is set 2140, something like that, 2240, so that a guy would know popular music that was popular briefly 100 and something. That's like if right now there was somebody who was really into music from 1877 who worked at the local factory. It's possible.
Fair enough, okay.
I don't think that's probably going to be too likely, though. Anyway, that's nitpicking. I thought it was really well shot, looked great. I don't know if there's a 3D option in some locations for this film, but I saw where that might have been effective here and there. I liked Michael Fassbender as the creepy, sinister robot guy. The cast was good overall. I liked it. It just seemed like it was
More of the same.
more of the same.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything wildly original. If you like alien movies and are not too hardcore about the lore, because I guess this messes up some of the lore that had existed in the original films.
Okay.
I could understand that. But as a guy who just sat down and said, "Give me an alien movie," I was entertained by it, and I welcome more of these.
For the most part, with the exception of the John Denver comment, I agree completely with you. My John Denver comment really was, if you're watching the trailers, they play "Take Me Home, Country Road," and it's all echoing throughout the Covenant, which is the ship.
Right.
And I was so, and this isn't a fault really, but I was so looking forward to watching this movie and forever thinking of Alien whenever I heard John Denver.
Like it
And-
would ruin the song in a sinister way.
Exactly
for you?
right.
Yeah.
And so that didn't happen because they really didn't play it. I mean, it comes
was a
through
brief moment.
very, very briefly, but you don't hear it a lot. So no big deal with that. I was struck with exactly more of the same. That it was wonderfully well shot. That it took, and this is part of what I didn't like originally about Prometheus, but then when I went back, I appreciated it. It sure took its time going. We're in lengthy. There's this one 10-minute scene with Fassbender as this replicant robot kind of guy, when I guess he's just coming out of it or he's just being trained by his creator. And it just seems to make very little sense because then we immediately cut to something else. And I'm like, why did I even watch that whole thing? So you see Fassbender throughout this whole thing. He's always very good, but very subdued. I thought he was a strange cast for this, although he did a good job. So I like that. I'm not a huge Alien, the entire sequence fan. I was troubled a little bit because we do find out kind of how, for want of a better term, how the aliens were created and who their real master is. And for me, and maybe you and I can talk off air because I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but an original iteration, which is how our Covenant team first get infected, seemed a lot more effective and well-minding than the facehuggers.
Yeah.
And so we see, but you get the facehuggers and everything. So if you're wanting anything, I was ultimately left with exactly how you opened. If I'd never seen an Alien movie before, this sure brings what it all feels like. It's fun. There are a couple of creepy moments where you see some young aliens, and they're whipping around, and I'm like, oh my God, how can you possibly survive that?
I thought that was really bad CGI, by the way. I was
There
sitting
was
in the
one
back
that
of
I
the
thought was
theater,
awful.
and
Yeah.
when the first couple times you see the tiny aliens when they first emerge, shall we say,
Right.
I'm like, that looks like a first pass. It didn't look like it was part of the same world, which is my problem with CGI in general. But this looked really like a first render. That was weird to me.
I had at least one instance of that, but it was when it was running away and
Yeah.
stuff. But so overall, I mean, they're amazingly creepy and scary. So I think if you're a big fan, you're going to like this. If you haven't seen it before, you certainly don't need to see any of the other ones beforehand to watch this. The thing that my biggest criticism of this movie was, and not that you were really going to care about the characters for want of a better term, because you know they're going to die, both because this is a prequel and because it's Alien. They spent so much time with a lot of characters and their wives and husbands, and they're so upset when their husband. And I couldn't keep anybody straight.
It was hard
Michael
to
Fassbender, Danny McBride, and everybody else. And so somebody get killed. Is my wife okay? Well, who's your wife? I don't get it.
That occurred to me
Yeah,
too.
so that really took me out of the picture, and I was lost for a lot of it. So I had to be less involved, just sitting back saying, oh, okay, somebody died, that's too bad. Red shirt, definitely that kind of thing. So overall, I was left with kind of a on this version, and ultimately out of 10, I gave Alien like about a 5 or a 6.
I will add briefly that if only all of James Franco's film performances
Yes.
were of the duration and final scene that
be
he gets in this film, the world would be a better place.
I like Franco, but what a fun surprise that was.
Yeah. Now, if for fans of this movie, before this came out, there were put out officially on YouTube a couple of, essentially they're deleted scenes, but they were saying, it's the prequel to the movie or whatever. There were scenes that give you a little bit more time with the crew. Because when you meet the crew, they're just basically waking up from a long sleep. There is a scene on YouTube that's, if you type in Alien Covenant deleted scene or whatever, that shows the crew. I think that they're preparing to go into sleep. So with that 5 or 10 minutes, you get a little bit more sense of who the people are and who's. I think everybody is pretty much in the arms of their spouse. So that would have been helpful here.
I got some, and this is a sciencey thing, and it's stupid, but I do have issues with. So they're on this big long transportation. The original Alien dealt with this, and Aliens dealt with this as well. But so they've been in stasis for years and years and years. I think it was 7 years this time. And something bad happens, and they wake up, and they're immediately running around when their muscles would have atrophied so much. I love the fact that Alien and Aliens dealt with that. So in as much as, and if you're a real fan, I think this is a fair criticism. If you're a real fan of the series and you remembered that, I think it's fair to criticize this movie about when something really bad happens and they wake up and they're immediately running around. Not the way it would have happened. So there were little things that really took me out of this movie that I was surprised that Scott and a lot of the people associated with it would have let stick in there. But they didn't ask us, did they?
Speaking, it's important that you brought that up. Speaking of sequels to long-running franchises involving preteen adolescents.
Yes.
Which might be the same thing. I'm just trying to keep it moving, folks. We have yet another tale of a non-masculine child who keeps detailed notes of his life in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and he's talking about a very lengthy corridor, The Long Haul.
Tradition and taste you savor when you ask for a Smithfield barbecue, James River brand, at our refreshment center.
That's not funny.
Not the way to end it for you?
That is one of my most hated things in movies, is everybody sitting in a car looking forward, singing along to a song that was really popular once but is now considered cheesy. That is one of the most hack comedy premises. Sorry.
Not that you saw this.
No, I didn't see the movie.
Or not that I saw it, but I like the original quite a bit, and this looks like it maintains the same kind of flavor. So while I didn't see it, I do plan to see it. I just didn't have time, so that's about all I can say, really, about it. But what I can say are things that might be available on video, however you end up getting it. Vin Diesel is back, even though you thought maybe that he might have died. Some of this, weren't you wondering what exactly happened to XXX? Well, now you can check out your local, not video store, but video download and find out what happened to him in The Return of Xander Cage. Or Return of Xander Cage is really what it's called. I don't think the definite article is actually there, that it's really The Return of Xander Cage. But you could say that, because he's definitely...
This one on the right is made out of high-strength steel. The one on the left is made out of aluminum.
Okay, so it's exactly that. I'm not... I can't keep all of the XXXs straight. There have been a couple of XXXs. Ice Cube was a XXX, I think. And so I just went into this... and I'm not crazy about Vin Diesel. I like him well enough. But I went into this saying, let's see some stuff blow up and some decent fights. Donnie Yen steals the show every moment he's on the screen.
He did in Rogue One, too.
He's just unbelievable. And so great action sequences, actually shot pretty well. I think the director realized, hey, it's Donnie Yen. Let's just let him do what he does.
That's what you need to do.
And so it gets bogged down in plot, I'm sorry to say, occasionally, and this feels a little bit long, but if you're a fan of the XXXs, if you're a fan of Vin Diesel, I had loads of fun with this thing. It's stupid as all get out, and some of the stuff that Diesel does and they have him do, I mean, like he's riding his motorcycle underneath this wave, and I'm like, come on. But if you accept it and just go for fun, I think you'll have a great time with it.
I did not see it,
so
I will use my time to recite the theme song to the Beverly Hillbillies.
Okay.
Come and if you can get on me. Come and listen to my story about... No, not going to do that. Sorry. So up next, we have a film which brings us back into the not-so-wonderful land in which Alice goes on a mysterious journey against toxic-type zombies and things, in which she is trying to kill and or be killed by those who are involved with Resident Evil, the final chapter.
Sure.
Maybe even longer!
Also, in a fashionable range of women's umbrellas.
I forgot Agent Smith was in this movie.
You're right. I'd say the prodigal script returns, because this is basically exactly the same thing. And whereas we talked about previously with Alien, more of the same, well, that's okay. This felt just like repetitive, more of the same for me. I love the Alice stories. I've always enjoyed the previous versions of this. I just thought this was, it was really dark, so it wasn't shot terribly well. And I just thought this was an unclever way to, if they do finally wrap this all up, if this really is the final chapter, yeah, right.
The movie doesn't even pretend like it's the final chapter at the end. Or
Right,
they're like, you know, they're still out there, and as long as they are, so will I be. Well, because this isn't the end.
Yeah, so as much as I enjoy at least watching the earlier ones, I did not like final chapter.
Me either, and it's a bummer because I really did enjoy the rest. I mean, they're trash, but they were always fun.
Right.
And they went in crazy areas, and you know, the end of one of the films is they're fighting all these demons or monsters or whatever, and then you see they're on the top of the White House, and it's a fortress, and there are dragons in the air, and I'm like, oh, woohoo! We'll get dragons next time. And then this one was aggressively unwatchable. I mean, visually, I couldn't see what was going on whenever there was anything approaching action. It's like they put a camera on a rope and swung it around and then cut those up, like what they did with Sgt. Pepper. They cut up it into 1-foot sections and then threw those up in the air and then pasted them together.
Right.
You couldn't see a damn thing that's going on in the whole movie. So I'm like, well, it's a good thing Mila, bothered to learn those moves, because we didn't see any of them.
Right.
And what you see in the trailer, as unwatchable as that is way more comprehensible than the movie is. So there was that. The villains were just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I hate to quibble about logic problems in a movie about zombies and robots and cloning and all that, but there was some of that in there. It was really terrible. It was like I wanted to leave. And I've seen this series up to now as a fun Saturday matinee.
Right.
Like it's just there's going to be guns and chicks and zombies and cars and motorcycles and zip lines and great, entertain me. And this one really didn't. This one just made me angry.
Right. Fair enough.
So screw it.
Yeah. Well, maybe billions of dollars can be more properly well spent. Gary Oldman plays sort of a scientist, more kind of a social activist, who is really pushing the colonization of Mars. We've finally gotten there in the near future. And one of the strange things that happens is the first human child is born. Not that that's strange, but the first human child is born on Mars. And this would be a PR disaster for everybody back home, because the astronaut was supposed to have been doing those naughty things. And so the kid, as he grows up, wants to come back, wants to see what home is like. So he actually sneaks out and finds his way back to Earth, and with the help of a young girl, helps to try to close the space between us.
It's harvest time! Trees full of big crunchy nuts. Time for a Mars bar!
So, I thought this looked, I didn't get the chance to see this in the theaters. I thought it looked interesting. I mean, it's about space and everything
It looks
like that.
visually very pleasing to the eye.
Visually, I mean, this is it's very diclectic. There are two movies in this. There's the whole spacey thing. This felt like The Martian meets The Fault Within Our Stars. So they've got all of this sciencey stuff going on. The stuff with Mars and in space is really well done. It's really interesting. But then there's the running subplot with Gary Oldman, who, what happened is, he's been pushing this. He was the backstory is, he was this little kid, and he wrote this letter to the president when he was 12, not the president, but Gary Oldman, saying, colony is great, and we have to be strong enough to not be afraid to go out and explore space. And the president read that, and Oldman became the poster child for space exploration. So he's grown up and he's pushed this whole thing. Trouble is, and this isn't giving anything away, this is really just kind of the basis of the film. The female astronaut who is leading the expedition turns up to be pregnant on her way there. Okay, so sorry, but first, in my opinion, a logic problem, and this is, for me, this thing is strewn with logic problems, which really pointed to me that this is a teenager movie. It's not a real thinking adult movie. Because, I'm sorry, if she's a professional astronaut, she's not going to risk having sex right beforehand so this all happens. So that was a bit of a problem. Bad things happen. The kid, for 16 years, we of course do the fade out, and then 16 years later, oh, that's great. So the kid's been basically hidden. Nobody on Earth knows that he exists except for NASA. And he's been forced to stay on Mars. But he has this Skype conversation. Now, again, how you can communicate, because they're actually talking to each other, and we know there's an 8-minute delay between us and the moon, and so how that happens, I don't know, how you can have actual real-time conversations. But he has a real-time conversation with this young girl who hates her life, and so they agree. He says, oh, I have this genetic condition, and I can't come visit you, sorry. So they agree ultimately that they're going to meet somehow. So he escapes NASA. Okay, so he's just this clever kid who can get out of Mars and find his way back to Earth. Really? So then they well, no, that's not right. I'm sorry. He agrees and that he wants to come back to Earth, and everybody helps him do that. So they build his bones up and everything because he's been growing up on 2/3. Blah blah blah. But then he escapes NASA and gets out and finds the girl, and they go on this big adventure. And for me, it's just every silly little kind of trite. I'm sorry, I really wanted to like this trite kind of teenage romance going on. And so it felt like two very different movies. I ended up not liking, if you're looking for a very light, kind of frothy teenage romance, then I think it's perfectly fine. Beautifully shot. Oldman is a bit over the top, and so in the long run, The Space Between Us was not what I expected it to be. I was looking for something that was all about how, and is this my fault? I think it's probably my fault more than the movie's fault. But about how wonderful Earth is, because all this kid's seen, one of the first things he says is, it's all green, it's all blue, look at all the wonderful things. And I was expecting more of that rather than, oh, I love you, and where's my dad? Wasn't crazy about The Space Between Us, sorry.
Speaking of teen angst and multidimensional variances and issues,
yes,
the next film we have to discuss, which is, if I may clue them in.
You should, because it comes from a very special distributor.
It is part of.
Don't you think?
Welcome once again to the Arrow Video Corner.
Exactly.
The remainder of what we talk about today will be from Arrow Video, a US-UK distributor who I personally like quite a bit. Oh, got you right in the.
It always gets me.
Knee, thankfully. So, if you would care to introduce this film,
I'd be happy
to.
You're going to recognize some folks from long ago who became a little bit more famous. A young kid gets involved in a nefarious scheme, and some strange little creature that keeps coming to visit him makes him commit some crimes. Things don't go terribly well as the time progresses for Donnie Darko.
And just like that, TV has changed forever. Introducing Rabbit TV.
I think that perfectly delivers what the whole film is all about. This is a super cult film. Mm-hmm. People who love it just absolutely love it and go berserk. In my opinion, or in my experience, most people to whom I've shown this blamed me for showing it to them because it's one of the most bizarre, strange films in the world. Not Jake Gyllenhaal's first movie, which was...
I believe Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, very good. He plays the little kid who gets threatened by a hook. But I think probably most well known for starting this. This was the one that really kicked him off. It's an Arrow transfer, so a couple things that you don't have to worry about is that unbelievably beautiful image quality. Loads and loads and loads of extras. I happen to be a fan of this. My understanding from our discussion off camera was that there's even some explanation in the extras that might make a little bit more sense, because as much as I enjoy this and I put pieces of it together every time I watch it, it's still kind of bizarre, but for me that's part of the mystique and the enjoyment of watching Donnie Darko. I've always enjoyed this movie, and this is a terrific treat to watch with the way they treated it.
I saw this originally on video. This got a very brief theatrical release back in, 2001 or so, 2002, and it did not do very well, and it found its audience, apparently from what I was reading in the extras, it found its audience in England, and that popularity gave it a nice distributor for DVD in this country, and DVD is where everybody discovered it. Right. So much so that they then went back to the filmmakers and said, could you guys put together a director's cut so we can put it back in theaters? And that's what I saw in the theater, actually, and locally at the Putnam was the director's cut. So this Blu-ray set is two 2 discs. You get the original theatrical version, then you get the director's cut, which basically gives you a lot more character moments, all that character development stuff that gets in the way of so many movies, and pages from this book that sort of explain, if not time travel, multiple timelines or dimensions and things like that. So there's a lot to chew on in this movie if you're hungry. As far as the extras on these discs go, I didn't even get a chance to look at them all before we did this program. I've delved pretty deeply into them. The first film has 2 different commentaries, one with the director and Gyllenhaal recorded, and these were recorded not long after the movie came out. Okay. So they're talking about how people have asked them since the movie came out if they could get the soundtrack, and they couldn't afford to put out a soundtrack, and now it would be a slam dunk. One with Gyllenhaal and director, one with the director and the cast, and then the director's cut has a commentary done around the time that came out, which was still many years ago, with Kevin Smith and the director, where they get more into why this director's cut exists, what's different, more of his thoughts on what it's about. Voluminous extras. Right. All of the original extras from the original DVDs, plus a new feature-length documentary about the making of the film that I watched and was really great. So if you're a Donnie Darko fan, as with anything Arrow, this is pretty much the definitive package. The movie itself, I really like. It is this strange, dreamlike, very kind of sad feeling to it, but moments of beauty too. Set in the late-ish 80s, which it does pretty well. You get Patrick Swayze in arguably his last great role, unless you count Black Dog. And it's a whole lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And it's one that, it's a film that rewards multiple viewings. And a lot of times people say that, and you'll see something and not like it, and they're like, well, you have to watch it 3 times. And I'm like, if I hated it once, I don't want to see it 2 more times. But this is one where you watch it once and it's intriguing and mysterious and you want to see it again. And there are so many tiny things that are planted throughout the film, and the whole theme of a time loop or multiple timelines and things, it's all there.
There you go.
For the watching. Speaking of all there for the watching, you can stay on me. There's another film from Arrow that is out now on the Blu-ray, and oh boy, if you're like me, this is exactly who this film was made for. Here is a film from 1975, Japanese exploitation action film based on a manga. Sonny Chiba stars as a man who, as the moon reaches its fullest moment of the month, becomes more and more invincible as bad guys are after him in Wolf Guy.
Fresh chef's favorites, potatoes and green beans.
Potatoes!
Oh, Fred, don't get the kids started.
And let that be a lesson to all of you.
What the heck?
That trailer. Okay, so basically the deal. I really liked this a lot. Sonny Chiba is known for the Street Fighter movies, for action movies. Tarantino likes dropping his name, and he put him in the Kill Bill in a small role.
Right.
And he's a martial arts guy from Japan in the 70s. And this film is interesting because it has that fantasy element. He's essentially a werewolf, but you never see him turn into a werewolf.
Okay.
And they just explain it as the moon gets to the 15th day of the month when the moon is full, he's invincible. So at one point in this movie, these bad guys have him, and they're doing horrendous things to him, but the moon becomes full, and he just heals himself from all these horrible things and just goes crazy on everybody. So the film is wonderfully sleazy. It has a wonderfully funky fuzz guitar, Waka Chicka soundtrack. The action is a heck of a lot of fun. There's a moment where he's running down a hallway in the bad guy's lair, and all of these doors open in the walls and ninjas slide out, and I just had to start applauding the film in my home. It was just so much fun. So it looks and sounds great because it's Arrow. You get really cool extras that set the context for the movie, but also give you the background and those who worked on it. So you get a 10 or 20 minute interview with Sonny Chiba that's like a part 1 where he talks about his career from the beginning.
Really?
And then you get one with, I believe, the director of the film and the producer of the film, one of whom at the end as a post credits for the featurette, he says, so this movie's popular and you're releasing it? Oh, yeah, I really didn't want to make this movie, and then it cuts to black. So, and then it's got that 1 or 2 trailers on there too. I really enjoyed Wolf Guy. If you're a fan of Chiba, it's one that I'd never heard of until Arrow put it out. Okay. So it's like this little forgotten gem. I wouldn't say it's amongst his best movies, but it was certainly a heck of a lot of fun. Has a great look and a sense of style to it. Like if you like the female convict scorpion movies or some of those other Japanese female exploitation action, this kind of has that vibe to it. Certainly gory when it wants to be. And I liked Wolf Guy quite a lot.
No, good for you. Sounds like it's your XXX.
Yeah. This is my.
I don't
believe in guilty pleasures. I just thought this was a heck of a lot of fun.
Okay, good.
So, shall I, or do you?
It's all yours.
Oh, heckama jeckama. So we have now a film also from Arrow, coincidentally enough, from director Frank Henenlotter, who gave you and me films such as Basket Case and Frankenhooker and Bad Biology and other things. This was a film he made in 1988 about a man. What are you going to do when you have some little tiny weird thing that lives on or about your person who injects strange things into the base of your spine and makes you see pretty colors? Well, you, my friend, in all likelihood, have brain damage.
Rot your brain. That's absurd. TV only softens the brain.
Welcome back to Cinemaniacs. I'd never seen this movie.
Oh, really? I'm a big. I won't say I'm a big fan of this. I certainly don't dislike it. I enjoy it. But no, I've seen this many, many times.
I saw this for the first time this weekend via this Arrow disc, so I don't have anything to compare it to and how much better it looks than anything else.
Wow.
But it looks great.
Yeah.
And the whole deal is that this guy, this young kind of directionless guy, comes across this weirdly, almost crudely shaped brain on a stick, so to speak, that attaches itself to the base of his spine, and it occasionally injects him. It's like a parallel for like drug addiction, basically. Sure. So it injects this guy, and he walks around looking at the pretty colors and happy. Doesn't want to do anything with his life except enjoy the pretty colors and in the euphoria that this thing injects. But it does demand a price, which is eating brains. So it's not going to eat his. So it's going to help. He's going to have to help it go and get others. So again, from the director of Basket Case, this is very similar structurally or thematically to Basket Case, in that it's a young guy who carries around a burden that demands blood so that he can continue. And in fact, there is a very brief scene on a subway train where he sits down and the guy from Basket Case sits down with the basket. So that was pretty funny. It's very funny. It's very silly. This is the movie he made right before Frankenhooker, which I just saw on film this weekend, and is a flat-out ridiculous comedy. And this is very, very close to that. The gore is gory and ridiculous. There's a scene in an alleyway involving a lady who's at a lower altitude than our hero, who it is apparently more explicit than it's been in many years. I think maybe until the DVD came out a few years ago, you never saw that scene in full. So if you saw this in a theater or on tape, you never probably saw that before. That was kind of shocking to me. I'm like, wow, that's really... I mean, what's being used is not what normally would be used on film, right. But that's pretty explicit looking right there. So not for kids, certainly an unrated type of movie. Being that it's Arrow, once again, it is loaded with extras, which I did not have time to watch all of, but I watched some. And there's a fun piece with Michael Gingold from Rue Morgue magazine where he takes you on a tour of the locations that were used in the film as they look now. And I really like that. He did the same thing on the Chud DVD that was released earlier, the Chud Blu-ray. So I thought Brain Damage was a lot of fun. If you like goofy 80s gore, bizarro movies, Brain Damage was a very pleasant surprise that somehow had eluded me all this time. Okay, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Finally got to see it. I found it hard to believe when we saw this arrive at our door that you said that you hadn't seen it before. It's one that I have on an original VHS copy of it that I got from VHS too. A video store that went out of business, and I just hadn't gotten around to watching it yet. And thank you, Arrow, for making my first viewing the best possible way to see it. So we have a little time. Okay. This weekend, if I may, I went to the annual Hudson Horror Show, which is a 6-movie marathon that is put on twice a year, and they do a show at the double feature at the Alamo every year in Poughkeepsie, New York, at a mall theater, and they take 2 screens and they run these 6 films in slightly staggered order between the 2 theaters, and it is one of the most fun times I personally can have in a theater. I've come to really love this show, and the guys that put it on are just fantastic. I think Chris and the gang who put on the show, they are so entertaining and fun and create this sense of community and camaraderie that if it wasn't them putting it on, I probably wouldn't like it as much. Okay. The audience is fantastic. People are there, they'll hoot and they'll holler and they'll cheer during the ridiculous moments in the movie, but they shut up during the rest of the movie. And there are rules, and it's, no talking, no using your phone and all that, and everybody's on board with that. And it's a great group of people to see a movie with. So there's that. Now, it is sad that I am 2 days back from this program, and I cannot remember all of what I saw. But it's all on film. There is always a mystery movie, which is never announced, and you can't talk about it. It's like Fight Club. The rule of the mystery movie is you don't talk about the mystery movie. You have to be there to see it. And if you missed it, well, shucks, you missed a good time. So it was Frankenhooker on film, which I love and was very funny. It was a movie called Slaughterhouse from the late 80s, a slasher, kind of a lighthearted slasher movie, which I didn't really care for. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors,
Right.
which I'm not really a big fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And it had moments.
That's when they
but
started getting really silly.
they started becoming comedies, and Freddy went from being a sinister, scary character to the kind of the one you were rooting for.
Yeah,
exactly. It had, one of the stars was Craig Wasson, which was just odd. So it has the Dawkins song. Everybody remembers it for Dream Warriors and all that, and I just didn't think it was that great. Then there was the mystery movie, which I've loved. I can't say what it was, but it's a movie I've always wanted to see. I actually have on Blu-ray, but hadn't watched yet. So it was the best way to see it, with an audience that just like erupted in raucous cheers and applause as soon as they realized what it was, and during all the great moments in it. And Piranha, the original Piranha by Joe Dante, which is a fun movie. It's always not as much fun as I want it to be, but I liked it a lot.
Right.
And the prints for everything were quite good. And they're vintage trailers between each film that kind of all had something to do with the film you were about to see, or were just fun. Like I could see the Space Hunter trailer for the first time, since I was a kid. Oh, and The Hidden was the other movie, which is a really, if you haven't seen The Hidden, that's a really fun flick that I think has pretty much been forgotten. It was like, it didn't do well in theaters, it hit tape and really found its audience, and then it's kind of fallen off the map again. And it's this like action comedy sci-fi thriller about basically Kyle MacLachlan looks like a normal guy, but he's an alien who is hunting down an alien that can basically inhabit people's bodies. So it's goofy fun, and it was a heck of a good time. So it was all those movies. They have vendors there that sell horror merch, posters, T-shirts, what have you, and it's really this great all-day thing. So I would say if that sounds good to you, I would highly recommend looking up Hudson Horror Show online and get on the mailing list to know when they're going to do it again. Because I went to one on a whim. I'd heard about it for a while, and I'm like, oh, that's a long way to drive. The phrase "long way to drive" to me, it's lost a lot of its meaning over the last year or two. So to be 6.5 hours is now nothing to me. So 2+ or 3, that's nothing. Once I went, I'm like, why did I never come to this? Okay. So I can't not go ever again. This coming weekend at the Mahoning Drive-In, which is my home away from home most weekends, in lovely Laheyton, Pennsylvania, is the annual Zombie Fest, which is because it's a long weekend, 3 days of zombie movies. The Evil Dead trilogy back-to-back on Sunday night, Rabid, Invasion of the Flesh Hunters, which is a kind of a cannibal movie, really. What else? Geez, a movie called Raiders of the Living Dead that I've never seen. Land of the Dead, which was the last Romero zombie movie. A couple others. I would say if you go to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater Facebook page or website, you can see the list. But that's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. And I'm working the snack bar register all weekend there. So that's going to be, if I watch them all, 9 movies over the course of 3 days. Which is a long way of saying we are not doing a show next week because Cheshire TV will be closed for the Monday holiday. So the next time you see us, we will be talking muy rapidamente about whatever we have seen in the erstwhile, which will include the new Pirates of the Caribbean film, the new Baywatch film, and something else big. I want to say it might be the new Wonder Woman by that time. I really think it comes out early in June.
Which looks like loads of fun.
It looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And again, I was trying to plan my movie watching in the upcoming weeks, and I love the superhero movies.
Right.
Wouldn't it be great if they were 90 minutes? I'm just saying.
Yeah, right.
Do they all have to be minimum 2 hours,
Yeah,
2.5? I mean, we have to get the origin story in there. I don't want to break any dreams or shatter any illusions, but most people know these origin stories already, and most people carry something in their pocket that while they're waiting for the trailers to start, they can look up what the origin story is. So maybe like under the credits.
Because you really need to.
Remember Superman Returns? You basically got the Superman story under the opening credits. Right. That's how you should do it. Yeah. I'm just saying, especially if it's like a new Spider-Man where it's like the 5th time in 10 years we're retelling that story.
Oh, he was bitten by a radioactive spider? Really?
You don't say. Anyway. I'm looking forward to the new Wonder Woman. I always loved Wonder Woman, the old show. Right. It's going to be hard to beat Linda Carter as Wonder Woman for me, but I would love to see a female superhero.
Later on this summer, we'll have Justice League. We've had all these other, Wonder Woman and the Batmans and the Supermans and all that stuff building up to it. Then you're going to have Justice League coming out.
And I hope, unlike the Superman versus Batman, pretty much almost solely existed to set up the Justice League movie.
It's your fault.
I hope this doesn't devote too much time to that too. I hope it's really just about Wonder Woman.
Let Diana do what she's doing.
Yeah. And I don't need 6 superheroes in every movie. You can do the team-up movies, but like the last Captain America was essentially an Avengers movie. It's like, one at a time is fine. Because if you recall the Tim Burton Batman series in the 80s into the 90s, what killed those was too many villains or too many superheroes. one-on-one is cool. And it doesn't always have to be about the end of the world in an earth-sucking vortex. It could be about, they got to stop a bank robbery, and it's 80 minutes. Or maybe there's a runaway train with plutonium on it. 95 minutes, we're going to take care of that. I'm giving them...
You just set up the next 2 sequels. There
Yeah, there you go.
Easy to do.
Anyway, how about you?
I've just been watching baseball and waiting for Pirates to come out. And and October 6th is Blade Runner.
The new
If
Blade
I haven't
Runner?
said it many times.
I still haven't even seen
thus
that
far.
trailer yet. I'm waiting to see it on the big screen.
Oh, okay.
And for me, I just signed up for the 30-day free trial of Showtime because Twin Peaks came back.
Yep.
And I was a big fan of that originally.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm really curious about the new show, and I don't trust the rest of the world to shut up about it for the 6 months it'll take for it to come out on disc. So
Right.
I'm going to start watching that probably this week.
Good for you.
So until next week,
Until 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now, when
Yes.
next we meet, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs.